Hello and welcome to live post-match reaction to the Rugby Championship game between Argentina and South Africa. The final score was 23-41 and South Africa, the Springboks, came through. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and welcome to the show. Before we get on to the Rugby Championship, though, I want to say a big congratulations to the Black Ferns who have won the Women's Rugby World Cup earlier. I couldn't watch both games at the same time, but looking at it, they were under the cosh in the first half, where England perhaps didn't make the most of their chances, and then in the second half, they really put on a powerful performance and scored the points they needed to put England away. So congratulations to the Black Ferns there. Hi, and thank you for joining me, Gregor. So thoughts on the red card? Yep, we'll definitely get on to that in time, because let's be honest, discipline was a problem in this game for Argentina. 3 yellow cards, the last one turning into a red because for a second offence definitely hindered them in this game. Initially, we've got to compare this obviously to the Bledisloe Cup last night, and this was a different game entirely, leading to much more kicking and territorial game. The commentators made a very big deal about the size of the pitch, saying that it was kind of the minimum width, but also not a very long pitch. And so kicking was very much part of it. And we saw that in the second half, where because South Africa infringed at the try, the Pumas actually restarted with a penalty and kicked straight for posts, which led to a 10-point turnaround at that point. So yes, it wasn't the longest pitch, but the kicking was of mixed variety in this. Argentina took the early lead through a penalty, and South Africa missed 2 penalties. And yeah, Yankees kicking wasn't as good as it could have been in this one. I can't remember exactly how many he missed now, but he had only a 75% kick rate, which it could have been worse at one, especially after you missed your first opening 2. So the first yellow card was for no arms in the tackle that Argentina picked up, and yep, I agree with that. The commentators were talking at the time saying, "Oh, that's very dangerous. He could be breaking legs. It should be a red." Basically, they were trying to not say it quite so clearly, but they were definitely saying that's definitely where they were heading. To me, the tackler hit the hips rather than the legs. Yes, if it had been lower and aiming for the knees, then we could have seen it a bit more. But no, there were definitely no arms in the tackle, and the yellow card there was fine for that one. We then saw it's a bit of a hair and scarum kind of game. If we look at some of the stats, for example, Argentina turned the ball over 14 times, the South Africans 15 times, so plenty of turnovers. And Argentina nearly took advantage of that in the first half, where they got an interception, but their player got run down. And then when the ball came out to Hernandez, he tried a crossfield kick and basically kicked it out on the full, which really wasn't needed. He could have passed it through the hands. There was a big overlap there for Argentina. And one of the things we talked about last week about Argentina was their lack of execution. And we saw that again tonight, is that these details, what other teams call the 1%ers, are more 5 and 10%ers, and there really was there really wasn't the execution there. One Dem says a lot of kicking today wasn't there. Yeah, I can remember at least 3 or 4 kicks out in the full. Quite a few kicks were short or long, and definitely not where they were supposed to be. And there was a lot of kicking. Argentina had 32 kicks from hand, South Africa 36 kicks from hand. This was much more a territorial game than we saw last night. Because a lot of these kicks, there were definitely contestable kicks, don't get me wrong. There's also a lot of long kicks for territory, saying, right, if you want to score, you're going to have to go the length of the pitch. And the teams weren't able to do so. It was interesting that after those kicks out in the full, South Africa did get the opportunity to go for a kick, and then went for the scrum instead. We're seeing quite a lot of that as a trend in rugby now, is taking penalties and making them into 10s. One Derm says he can't believe Hernandez decided to kick that chance away. Yeah, that crossfield kick was the wrong option. He should have put it through the hands, and then Argentina would have had had a score there. So South Africa turned down the chance of kicking for 3. I mean, it was an easy kick and went for the scrum instead. They thought they had the advantage. They obviously had 14. They were against 40 men at the time, but they failed to convert. So this wasn't clear. So even though South Africa did rack up 41 points, they definitely left points out on the pitch as well. So they could have scored a lot more. When they got back to 15, one of the things that they were trying to, because of the rush defence from the Pumas, was that little chip over the top. This time it worked. Creel caught it, released Khaleesi, and they got a try there. The problem is, and then they also added a penalty to that to take a 10-point lead. And again, but South Africa also weren't that clinical in this game. I say they left points out there, and at the restart they let the ball bounce to allow the Pumas to grab the ball and score. So this really it's getting a bit of an error-ridden performance in quite a lot of ways. There's a lot of harem-scarum kind of play as well. And that's what gave South Africa the lead at half-time. The Argentina, as we've seen so much from the Jaguares, made one offload too many. The ball hit the grass, and South Africa picked up the ball. And obviously, with the Pumas being on attack, there was just no one at home to give them a 10-17 lead. Just before half-time, the penalties were racking up, and I think it was about 7 or so by then. And the referee had enough and sent an Argentinian player to the bin. So there was definitely that hurt them, because then Yankees did a little jink and got through. So yeah, sorry, that one that hit the grass. I'm trying to remember exactly where the tries came from now. But that led to a 17-10 lead at half-time for South Africa. A much better start to the second half from Argentina. And they made 2 yellows and a red in the 50-something minute, 57th minute. Meant that for pretty much half this game, or more in fact, they were playing with 14 men. And that really did start to tell towards the end of the game with fitness and things. We did see that, having to make all those extra tackles, or as I'm going to talk about in a minute, having miss all those extra tackles really did hurt them. They did knock over at 3. Khaleesi finished off a good counter-attack, again getting his second try for the match, and that's really where South Africa started to lift it up. I'd say it was a territory game here. There was lots of kicking at that point. And we then came to the second yellow card. The number 8 for Argentina, deliberately knocked on, was a deliberate knock on, and therefore it's a yellow. It also turned into a penalty try as well, because there were 2 players outside him. And yes, his second yellow, so it's a red. It's simple as that. Prior to that, though, there were 2 Argentinian players and 3 South African players scuffling away from play as play continued. And I personally think that the 19 for South Africa really should have been yellow carded there. He grabbed the head guard of one of the players, dragging him down, then used his feet to flip him over. When another player comes in, now the South African commentators talking about him coming in from a long way away. Well, if you've got one guy on 3, someone's got to go in there and help him. The first thing that he does was try to grab the head guard and try and drag the guy's head. If you pull players' hair, that's a cardable offence. I think if you're going to grab and pull the head guard, that also should be a cardable offence as well. So I think South Africa got lucky there, and perhaps World Rugby needs to look at that one and stop people grabbing people's head guards and dragging them around. That's just not that's not the kind of play we want to see on rugby. It all got very messy after that. Obviously, South Africa, having the extra player, felt there was space on the pitch, felt they could be going around and scoring points, and so they tried a bit of harem-scarum when they perhaps should have been playing a bit more of a controlled game at times, especially when there were 2 scores ahead. Argentina obviously were having to try and get themselves back into the game, and playing with 14 men were throwing everything at it. But quite a lot of these attempts weren't coming off at all. South Africa at times did make the right decision to say, right, let's kick and play the right part of the pitch. You're going to have to go all the way. But I do felt that they tried a few too many offloads. Now, it did lead to a try towards the end that sealed the game with 2 minutes to go, but it also could have led to interceptions. and Argentina running the length of the pitch in the other way. In the end, it paid off, and South Africa definitely looking to play this much more expansive and free-flowing style of game. So it shouldn't be too surprising, I guess. Yes, the red card hurt Argentina, but a whole bunch of other issues hurt them as well. They only had to make 63 tackles in this game, which isn't very many, but they only made 41 of them. A 65% tackle rate against at international level is just not acceptable, and they really need to up that if they're going to want to try and challenge anybody at this level. South Africa are around the 85% level. Argentina were given plenty of possession and territory, especially in that second half. They got 52%, and they got kind of even there. But yeah, not getting those clean breaks, not being able to break the line the same way South Africa did, really did help them. Yeah, the South African defence, as was mentioned in the chat there, was good today. The other side of this was, as I talked about, the handling. Argentina had 2 scrums. They won both of them, that's fine. South Africa had 9 scrums. And that shows you how many times the Argentinians knocked the ball on. And of course, sometimes you play advantage and you don't get the scrum. So there were more knock-ons than that. But 9, so that was some really poor handling by Argentina. And those sort of 70-odd kicks we had during the game obviously led to a lot of line-outs, 19 for South Africa and 13 for Argentina. Both of them worked pretty well, but Argentina's definitely worked the better of the 2. So there we have it. From Argentina, again, a lack of discipline really hurt them, picking up those 3 cards. Lack of execution around kicking out on the full when you should just put it through the hands. A lot of knock-ons. Again, another thing that really hurt them as well. This week, at least they kicked all their goals, but that was never going to be enough when they're making so many mistakes and missing so many tackles. Also on the penalty count, yeah, 11 to Argentina, 6 to South Africa as well. So they were lost out there. South Africa, a bit better than last week. To me, last week they did everything right. They did nothing wrong, but not particularly much right. This week they did a bit more right in throwing the ball around. Yeah, but they also did some things wrong, especially that restart, which you let bounce and let Argentina walk in for a try. That was appalling. Especially and then 15 turnovers conceded. They were far from, but that was from them trying to do things this week, whereas last week, I say they didn't perhaps try as much, and maybe they tried it, and they were trying it in the right part of the pitch as well. They were kicking with territory, and then, hey, when we're in the other half, we'll give it a go. So yes, South Africa are going to be a challenge for Australia in particular, and also for New Zealand as well, especially in South Africa. Those are going to be interesting games. It's good to see them come back and be a force. It's really quite sad to see that Argentina not stepping up and moving forwards. Their lack of, they're trying to pick a team from one, or trying to pick an international team from one Super Rugby side is really starting to hurt them. They don't have the depth there. The players that have gone to Europe are some of their best players, and they just don't have the depth to be able to survive it and put together a team. A bit like Australia in some ways, in fact, the amount of talent they've lost overseas and how raw their team is. But they have 5 teams currently, obviously it's going down to 4, but that they have to pick from, which gives them a bit of competition, a bit of depth, which Argentina doesn't have. So that discipline, that execution needs to be improved from Argentina. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long championship for them. For South Africa, their first away win in over a year, which is big for them, which will be very good for their morale heading forwards, especially after that really poor November tour to Europe. Thank you very much for joining me. Please, if you've enjoyed this, share this with your friends. Do subscribe to the channel or subscribe to the podcast. I will be back on Tuesday with another live show for the #Rugby Chat with 2 guests as we discuss 5 hot topics around, obviously talking a lot about the Rugby Championship, Mitre 10 Cup, and I think we'll probably talk about the Women's Rugby World Cup as well. So thank you very much for joining me, and catch you all later.